Music is such a vital element to any great film. It's so much more than just music that plays in the background. It brings an inexplicable magic to our favorite cinematic moments. A good musical score captures the essence of a film, serves as a storytelling device, sets the mood for a scene or setting, and can have motifs that are synonymous with specific characters. Music can complement stories, settings, and characters in a language of its own, and draw emotions from audience in a way that even the best script or acting never could. This is why the best musical scores are not only nice to listen to on their own, but they're even better when listening to them in the context of a movie. Just like a song can make us think of a specific memory or person in our lives, movie scores can remind us of specific characters and moments in our favorite films. While I'm not a musical expert, I can still appreciate what specifically makes each score so great and what it adds to a movie. I'm obviously very passionate about movie scores, which is why this is easily the longest and most ambitious video I've ever made. I initially thought about doing a top 10 list, and then a top 25 list, but there are so many amazing scores I want to talk about that I expanded it to 50. Heck, I could do a top 100 list and still have to leave out some amazing scores, but 50 is the number I'm going to go with. Of course, this isn't the definitive list of the best 50 musical scores. These are simply the ones that resonated and connected with me the most. If a score is low on this list, or doesn't make it at all, that doesn't mean I dislike it. It just means there are so many amazing other movie scores that I happen to connect with more. Many of your rankings might look very different than mine, so share yours in the comments. You don't have to list 50 of them like I'm about to, but I'd love to see which movie musical scores are your favorites. Without further ado, let's get started. Number 50, Transformers by Steve Jablonski. Michael Bay's live-action Transformers movies tend to have a reputation for being overly bloated, campy movies with bad scripts. But the original one in 2007 came out to mostly praise, and as someone who was in high school at the time, I was right within that target demographic. What I remember most fondly about that movie, outside of the fighting robots and Megan Fox, was the incredible music. Arrival to Earth is a piece that slowly builds up into a grand, heroic theme that gets you pumped and feel ready to take on the world. It sets the mood well for the arrival of the Autobots, giving off a tone of hope and optimism. The choir kicking in during the second half of the piece is also a really nice touch. Say what you want about the quality of Michael Bay's Transformer movies, but there's no denying that the music is epic and the perfect way to kick off my list. Number 49, A League of Their Own by Hans Zimmer. I bet you weren't expecting this movie to be on the list. A League of Their Own is mostly known for its funny moments, like There's No Crying in Baseball. Not to mention a loaded cast with Gina Davis, Tom Hanks, and Madonna. But one thing nobody seems to talk about is the musical score for this movie. It has so much energy, embodies the time period with its sound, and it's just fun. This movie is full of baseball montages, all of which have that high energy, jazzy swing music. I also love little moments like mixing in the wedding march when Marla gets married, or the lone trumpet that plays during the final showdown between Dottie and Kit, bringing a lot of tension and gravity to the moment. But my favorite trick that Hans Zimmer pulls off is when Dottie and Jimmy are both trying to give signals at the same time. Whenever Dottie signals, the wind section gently plays. When Jimmy signals, a heavy brass sound kicks in. The faster their signals get, the more chaotic the music becomes. It's brilliant. Seriously, watch this movie again and pay close attention to the music. It's some of the best you'll ever hear in a movie. Number 48, Kung Fu Panda by Hans Zimmer and John Powell. This is another high-energy score that matches the dynamic fight scenes of the movie. I love the use of traditional Chinese instruments. Hans Zimmer strove for authenticity to the point where he actually visited China to study the traditions and culture as he wrote this musical score. I like the contrast of the two major Tai Lung fights. When Shifu fights him, the score gives off a sense of urgency and tragedy, as we know the history between these two characters. But when Po fights him in the end, it has a much more optimistic and triumphant feeling, helping us revel in Po's victory along with him. But the piece that puts this movie's score on my list is Oogway Ascends. For all the fast-paced music that plays throughout this movie, this one is slow, serene, and one of the most beautiful pieces of music I've ever heard. Seriously, this is a kids movie about a panda who does kung fu. They did not have to go this hard. Hans Zimmer and John Powell went all out with a score that's authentic, beautiful, and fitting within the story's themes. Number 47, Edward Scissorhands by Danny Elfman. Danny Elfman definitely has a way of creating music that's haunting and quirky, while simultaneously being beautiful and comforting. Nowhere is this more evident to me than in Tim Burton's Edward Scissorhands. Much like with Steven Spielberg and John Williams, Tim Burton and Danny Elfman have collaborated a lot over the years. Elfman's unique sound complements Burton's unique filmmaking voice perfectly here. The opening titles theme, along with the ice dance, embody the majesty of winter, and it really seems like Tchaikovsky was a major inspiration here. Number 46, Mission Impossible Fallout by Lorne Balfe. We all know that classic Mission Impossible theme. It's been around for decades and, along with the James Bond theme, has become synonymous with espionage. Lorne Balfe took this well-known melody and not only honored it, but turned it into the best possible version of itself. It's got the blaring orchestra, the epic choir singing in Latin, and 12 bongo players. That's right, 12. This was meant to be a nod to the original show, which utilized a bongo player for its theme. But in Balfe's own words, why have one when we can have 12? This is the perfect way to illustrate Lorne Balfe's ability to crank things up to 11 when it comes to this iconic theme. Fallout is easily my favorite out of the Mission Impossible movies, and the music is no exception. Number 45, The Dark Knight Trilogy by Hans Zimmer and James Newton Howard. Some of the spots on my list will include a full trilogy, rather than singling out one of the movies, simply because it can be hard to pick just one. Plus the fact that a lot of the music is reused throughout the whole series. Yeah, it's kind of cheating, but hey, it's my list and my rules. Christopher Nolan revitalized Batman in a way that was much more grounded. While the music in these movies isn't as iconic as Danny Elfman's theme from the 80s, it does fit the more modern crime thriller mood of these films. Molasses is an amazing theme that becomes Batman's main motif throughout the trilogy. It perfectly fits the intense, action-packed chase scenes where Batman drives around in his tumbler and his motorcycle. But the standout themes in this trilogy have to go to the villains. Heath Ledger's Joker is one of the greatest villain performances of all time, and it's enhanced by the twisted, unsettling music that accompanies his character. Hans Zimmer actually uses razor blades on string instruments and relied mainly on 2 notes, but achieved an effect that made the Joker's unpredictability and chaotic nature that much scarier. It sounds like something out of a horror movie. Deshi Basara is also a unique and intimidating theme for Bane. His character is a cult leader and a physical specimen, and the rhythmic chanting and heavy reliance on brass makes perfect sense for his character. Number 44, Black Panther by Ludwig Goransson. With 2 Oscars locked down already, Ludwig Goransson's career has been off to an incredible start, and the way he's been going, it's only going to get better. In addition to doing plenty of TV music like The Mandalorian, Community, and New Girl, he's worked closely with directors like Ryan Coogler and Christopher Nolan. He's fresh off an Oscar-winning score for Oppenheimer, but I think his finest work so far has been for Black Panther. The main theme for Wakanda and T'Challa is so triumphant, utilizing vocals and traditional African instruments well, and perfectly integrating them with a big orchestra. Killmonger's theme also really sticks out, giving us a blend of Wakanda's theme and a trap beat, giving it a hip-hop feel. This is such a brilliant compliment to his character, as Eric Killmonger is a man of 2 worlds, a Wakandan who grew up in Oakland, California. But the biggest standout piece for me was the ancestral plane. The way this piece swells into that epic emotional motif fits perfectly with T'Challa's emotional reunion with his father. Number 43, Forrest Gump by Alan Silvestri. When it comes to music, Forrest Gump is most known for having a vast soundtrack featuring several of the best hits from the 1950s through the 1980s. But we can't forget about Alan Silvestri's score, which is so pleasant to listen to and fits well with the innocence and optimism of our main character. I love how the opening theme starts with a sweet piano medley as that feather floats through the air, and I really like how the movie ends in the same way with the same tune. Run, Forrest, Run is another great piece that fills you with hope and joy as Forrest literally runs out of his leg braces and sprints across town. Forrest Gump is definitely among Silvestri's best work, but don't worry, you'll see him a few more times on this list. Number 42, The Karate Kid by Bill Conti. Anyone who follows my channel probably knew that this movie was going to be on the list. Bill Conti sets the tone right away with the opening credits music, which serves as an overture for the movie. Daniel and his mom driving across the country doesn't sound like the most exciting way to start a film, but Conti's music is so earnest and charming that you're instantly drawn in. Allie's love theme has a really sweet sound, and I love that they brought it back for her return in Cobra Kai. But the meat of this musical score features the pan flute during all of Mr. Miyagi's scenes. It has a mysterious but peaceful sound, which is perfect for Miyagi's character. The montage where Daniel trains on his own is absolute perfection, and I love how it mixes Miyagi's pan flute theme with Daniel's orchestral theme, showing that he's finally in tune with his sensei's teachings. When that intense music kicks in right as Miyagi claps his hands together to heal Daniel, man, that was awesome. And of course, there's that triumphant theme that brings us home when Daniel scores that final kick against Johnny. Number 41, Man of Steel by Hans Zimmer. Just like with Batman, Hans Zimmer composed an updated superhero theme that, while not as iconic as the original, is still really, really good. Flight is one of the best pieces Zimmer has ever composed. It makes amazing use of the drums and electric guitar in the first half, takes a small break with the piano in the middle, then crescendos into a glorious climactic melody. When this plays during Superman's return in the Snyder Cut of the Justice League, it gave me chills. John Williams is a tough act to follow, and I have great respect for Hans Zimmer creating a score with its own identity, rather than simply trying to imitate the original theme. Number 40, Skyfall by Thomas Newman. Just like with Mission Impossible, James Bond's theme is synonymous with espionage. It's cool and suave like its lead character, and it's been around for decades. And just like what Lorne Balfe did with Mission Impossible, Thomas Newman was able to honor the original Bond theme while also updating it and make it the best it could possibly be. Skyfall has the best music in the Bond franchise in my opinion. The high-octane music in Istanbul stands out to me, as does Shanghai Drive, which is a really cool sounding stealth theme. I also have to mention the Adele song. It's briefly incorporated into the Komodo Dragon piece in the score, and it also happens to be the best Bond song ever performed in my opinion. When it comes to Bond music, Skyfall is the best. Well, except maybe the pause music on GoldenEye for the N64. 90s kids, you know what I'm talking about. Number 39, The Little Mermaid by Alan Menken. The Alan Menken era of Disney was just incredible. His songs from the Disney Renaissance era are cultural staples, and it was during this era that he won 8 Oscars in a 6-year span. His first 2 Oscars were for The Little Mermaid in 1989, where he won Best Original Score and Best Song for Under the Sea. His musical score and lyrical songs often go hand in hand, and from the moment The Little Mermaid begins, he brings the magic. Part of Your World is a masterpiece of a song, and its melody is incorporated well throughout the musical score, especially during the reprise after Ariel saves Eric's life. I also love Fathoms Below, which is a nice sailor shanty, and the Kingdom Tour music, but my favorite has to be Fireworks, an enchanting piece that really emphasizes the excitement that Ariel feels when spotting Eric's ship, followed by the upbeat folk music that the sailors dance to. Menken definitely earned those Oscars, and he was far from finished. Number 38, The Shawshank Redemption by Thomas Newman. The Shawshank Redemption is easily one of my top favorite films of all time, and the Oscar-nominated score by Thomas Newman is more than worthy of such an incredible story. This is a film that takes the viewer through a roller coaster of emotions, and Newman's score reflects every bit of that. It takes us through Brooks's tragic story with that melancholy piano. It takes us through the excitement of Andy's escape the second the warden rips that poster off the wall. It takes us through the exhilaration and relief of freedom when Andy Dufresne embraces the rain and reunites with Red. It's a gorgeous musical score for what might be one of the greatest movies of all time. Number 37, How to Train Your Dragon by John Powell. After collaborating with the likes of Hans Zimmer, John Powell took the reins for this movie's score, and man did he deliver. He really did his homework when it came to Nordic folk music, making use of traditional Scottish instruments and giving the score a really epic feel. Test Drive is one of the most majestic pieces ever written for a film, almost making the listener feel like they're flying. Forbidden Friendship and Romantic Flight are also standout pieces for me. Number 36, Avengers Endgame by Alan Silvestri. Alan Silvestri did the score to a lot of MCU films, including the original Avengers, but it was the Endgame score that left the biggest impact on me. There are plenty of great musical moments, like Thor and Captain America fighting Thanos, Tony's funeral, and the tribute to the cast during the end credits. But we all know which piece I'm thinking about with this movie. The music for the portal sequence is astonishingly epic. I love the way it starts with that booming bass drum and the lone trumpet as T'Challa walks through that first portal, only to build more and more as all of the characters reveal themselves. For how disappointing the MCU has been lately, it's easy to forget that this moment from 2019 was the absolute pinnacle of the opening night movie theater experience, and Alan Silvestri put everything he had into this piece, finishing with his classic Avengers theme from 2012 as Cap says those immortal words, "Avengers, assemble." Number 35, Spirited Away by Joe Hisaishi. Hisiashi is a master of his craft and someone who has the incredible ability to tell an entire story with just his piano. One Summer's Day is a mesmerizing piece of music, giving us a beautiful melody on the piano. It's an emotional piece that feels reflective in a way, like someone reminiscing on childhood memories. That's how I interpret it, at least. There are so many other great tracks to choose from, but The Dragon Boy and Bottomless Pit really stand out to me. It's so chilling and intense, giving off a spirit of adventure and fear at the same time. Joe Hisaishi does have one other musical score that connected with me more, which I'll talk about later in this list, but his music for Spirited Away deserves to be recognized. It's absolutely masterful. Number 34, The Incredibles by Michael Giacchino. It's funny because it seems like the musical score for The Incredibles was inspired by iconic espionage themes that I've already mentioned, like Mission Impossible and James Bond. And yet, I think this music actually surpasses those franchises. Giacchino's score is fast-paced, thrilling, and memorable. The Glory Days sequence at the beginning might be my favorite in terms of the music, where we get to see Mr. Incredible in his prime. Life's Incredible again is a piece that slows things down with a smooth, pleasant, jazzy sound, and Chronos Unveiled ramps up the intensity with a piece that makes us feel progressively anxious along with Mr. Incredible as he discovers Syndrome's dark secrets. There's also 100 Mile Dash, which probably makes the best use of a xylophone I've ever heard in a movie. And of course, there's the end credits, which ends the movie on the perfect note. The entire score is, for lack of a better word, incredible. Number 33, Titanic by James Horner. James Cameron and James Horner had a strained working relationship after collaborating on Aliens, but after killing it with the Braveheart score, Cameron decided to bring Horner on for one of the biggest hits of all time, Titanic. Cameron initially didn't want a lyrical song over the end credits, but Horner decided to secretly write My Heart Will Go On anyway, and recorded Celine Dion singing it. Cameron, of course, changed his mind after hearing it, and it became one of the biggest hit songs of the 90s. Anyone who lived in that era knows that that song was everywhere. The same melody is used for Hymn to the Sea, which is a really beautiful and melancholy piece of music. Horner's score does an amazing job at capturing the intensely tragic events of the Titanic's sinking. Distant Memories and Rose's themes are also masterfully done, and Horner deservingly won an Oscar for his work that year. Number 32, Home Alone by John Williams. Did it really take this long for a John Williams score to pop up on my list? Well, don't worry, he'll show up plenty more times. This may be a controversial opinion, but I don't think Home Alone would be a revered Christmas classic had it not been for John Williams' musical contributions. Director Chris Columbus had a tough time locking down a composer, and it was his colleague Steven Spielberg who suggested that he get the legendary composer on the phone. After all the iconic blockbusters Williams had done over the years, it didn't seem likely that he'd sign up for a slapstick family comedy. But he did, and ended up creating one of the most timeless Christmas tunes you'll ever hear. Somewhere in My Memory is a classic that brings a deeper level of emotion to a film that should have just been a lighthearted comedy. It makes the moment where he reunites with his family so much more special. There's also the frantic music that blares when the family tries to get ready on time, and that epic remix of Carol of the Bells when Kevin sets up his traps. This is a perfect example of a musical score going way harder than it needed to, and the movie was all the better because of it. Number 31, E.T. by John Williams. Steven Spielberg and John Williams were unstoppable during the 80s and 90s, and E.T. was no exception. One word comes to mind when I hear this music: whimsical. Everyone knows the scene when the bike soars through the air. It's one of the most memorable moments in movie history, and a big part of that is thanks to John Williams' music. It's magical in a way that's hard to describe in words. You just have to listen to it for yourself. It captures the adventurous and imaginative nature of childhood in a way that no other musical score has before. Number 30, Rudy by Jerry Goldsmith. Rudy is a movie I've always loved, but kind of like with Home Alone, I don't think it would have been as memorable for me without that majestic musical score. The tryout scene could have just had that standard upbeat sports music, but Jerry Goldsmith gave us one of the most inspirational tunes of all time during this scene. It helps put us in the mindset of Rudy, who's giving every bit of effort his little body has. For the other guys, the tryouts aren't as much of a big deal. But for Rudy, it's everything he's been striving for, his lifelong dream, and the music reflects that so perfectly. We get an even bigger and more emotional version of this theme during the final scene, where Rudy finally gets his chance to play for Notre Dame. The triumphant music swells as he makes that last tackle and gets lifted in the air by his teammates. It's impossible not to get teary-eyed as the catharsis of the scene washes over you, and Goldsmith's musical score is a major reason why this part, and the entire movie, works so well. Number 29, Dune by Hans Zimmer. Man, these tracks hit hard. From synthesizers to sitars to electric strings to those otherworldly sounding vocals, the Dune score has an ethereal sound that fits these sci-fi epics well. Denis Villeneuve's vision for Arrakis is incredible, and Hans Zimmer's atmospheric sounds and music make it one of the most memorable settings in movie history. Ripples in the Sand sets the tone really well for this new world that Paul Atreides explores, and Paul's Dream might be the best track in the entire franchise so far. I have to give a special mention to the worm ride from Part 2. When Paul conquered the sandworm, and this music blared in my IMAX theater on opening night, I couldn't help but get goosebumps. What a scene, and what a musical score. While it might not be as melodic as many of the other picks on the list, it definitely stands out and earned its spot on my list. Number 28, Jaws by John Williams. Two notes. Two notes is all it took for John Williams to terrify audiences in 1975. Everybody recognizes this theme. Those intense E and F notes signal impending doom in a way that no other musical score ever has. It's simple and straightforward to the point where Spielberg thought it was a joke when he first heard it, but there's no denying that it's had a major impact on moviegoers for decades now. But that's not to say that John Williams didn't add his usual adventurous flair into this score. Hand-to-hand combat is a really compelling piece that does a great job at emphasizing that final showdown between man and beast. The Jaws score is another all-time classic by John Williams. Number 27, Aladdin by Alan Menken. Just like with The Little Mermaid, Alan Menken did both the lyrical songs and the score for Aladdin. He secured 2 more Oscars for this movie, and it's no surprise. A Whole New World is arguably the greatest Disney song of all time, and its beautiful melody is integrated well throughout the score. Between that, Friend Like Me, and One Jump Ahead, this movie is full of so many memorable tunes that Menken masterfully weaves throughout his score. The music that plays when Genie gets his freedom makes the moment all more emotional, and puts an exclamation point on this iconic film score. Number 26, Braveheart by James Horner. Braveheart is easily one of my favorite films of all time, and the great James Horner delivered a masterpiece of a score with this one. The London Symphony Orchestra delivers a beautiful performance, and Horner also makes perfect use of the bagpipe. The battle scenes in Braveheart are grand and epic, and the music definitely reflects that, but my favorite pieces are the softer, peaceful ones, Gift of a Thistle and For Love of a Princess. And of course, I have to mention the theme that plays during the execution. What should be a tragic moment is actually full of inspiration and hope thanks to Horner's music. The orchestra swells as William Wallace delivers one final defiant cry for freedom. Number 25, The Prince of Egypt by Hans Zimmer. The Prince of Egypt is a masterpiece, and the musical score and songs do everything in their power to match the sheer awe and grandeur that a story like Exodus deserves. Not only did Hans Zimmer arrange the two best songs in the movie, Deliver Us and When You Believe, but he composed a score with a lot of range, from the fun chariot race to the terrifying hieroglyphic nightmare. But my favorite piece has to be The Burning Bush. Moses' first encounter with God begins with a gentle choir, giving off a peaceful ambiance before crescendoing into a powerful melody when God sends Moses on his mission. It's a piece that captures the warm, loving nature of God while also complementing his power and his majesty. Number 24, Dr. Zhivago by Maurice Jarre. Lara's theme features one of the most recognizable melodies, not just in movies, but in general. Director David Lean wanted Dr. Zhivago's music to have a traditional Russian feel, utilizing traditional instruments that no one in the MGM studio orchestra knew how to play, so he recruited musicians from a Russian Orthodox church nearby. It definitely added an authentic feel to the story's time and setting. Lean had wanted to use a Russian folk song as the main motif of the movie score, but it wasn't in public domain, so he needed Maurice Jarre to compose an original piece to serve as the movie's main theme. Jarre spent a romantic weekend in the mountains with his girlfriend and used her as the inspiration to compose one of the greatest love themes of all time. This melody is used in a variety of ways throughout the movie, and it never overstays its welcome. Lara's theme would eventually lead to the song Somewhere My Love, which was covered by Andy Williams, Frank Sinatra, and even Frankie Yankovic. Lara's theme has become a cultural staple, and one of the main reasons why Dr. Zhivago remains a timeless classic. Number 23, Up by Michael Giacchino. Does everyone have your tissues ready? No one who watches Up for the first time is ever prepared for how much of an emotional punch the first 10 minutes brings. This movie rips your heart out from the very beginning and manages to tell one of the greatest love stories of all time with no dialogue needed. Just a montage of life events and Giacchino's incredible musical score to tell the story. This is a perfect example of the music being an active part of the storytelling. It starts upbeat and optimistic as Carl and Ellie begin their journey of marriage, only to slow into a somber melody when you realize that they can't have kids. It picks back up as they move forward with their lives together, but slows back to that melancholy piano as Ellie passes away and Carl goes back into the home by himself. The main theme plays with a lot of variety throughout the film, even during the big action scenes at the end. But it's those first 10 minutes where the musical score really shines, and it makes for one of the most tear-jerking moments in all of cinema. Number 22, The Toy Story series by Randy Newman. As much as I love Up's music, there's simply no topping Toy Story when it comes to Pixar. Much like Alan Menken with his Disney movies, Randy Newman does both the lyrical songs and the score for the Toy Story movies and intertwines them well. This is an instance where I'll include the whole series because it's all so stellar. The first one has that amazing chaotic energy during the action scenes, and the music playing when Buzz and Woody soar through the air is simply breathtaking. Toy Story 2 kicks it up a notch by starting with Zurg's Planet, giving us an exciting and heroic theme that's really appropriate for Buzz Lightyear. The Cleaner is also a really memorable little piece that almost feels like it should be in a Tim Burton movie, but it works really well for a scene where Woody gets fixed up. Jesse's in Trouble has to be my favorite piece in this movie, giving us a thrilling homage to the Old West. But Toy Story 3 probably has the best score in the series. That playtime sequence at the very beginning gives us so many cool moments, mixing in some electric guitar, and even including some of the old motifs attached to our favorite characters from the previous movies. The Claw is easily the most intense music ever put into a Pixar movie, making us feel panic and hopelessness along with these toys as they're about to meet their end at the incinerator. The movie, of course, ends happily with So Long, an emotionally charged piece filled with both sadness and optimism as Andy says goodbye to Woody. It's the perfect way to end the Toy Story trilogy. And yeah, I know there's a Toy Story 4, but that wasn't my favorite. Number 21, Interstellar by Hans Zimmer. This musical score has Hans Zimmer's fingerprints all over it. It's both powerful and ethereal. It fits the vast scope of a space exploration story, and it makes incredible use out of that pipe organ. The intensity of his pieces fill moviegoers with a sense of urgency as the astronauts try to dock their ship or escape Miller's planet. Mountains is such a chilling theme that features a ticking clock as its percussion, reminding us that years are flying by on Earth for every hour they spend on this planet. The music builds and builds as they make the horrifying realization that those aren't mountains, they're waves. It captures the beautiful and lethal nature of this planet so perfectly, making for a mesmerizing scene. What's amazing is knowing that Christopher Nolan asked Zimmer to compose music for this film before he even knew what it was all about. Zimmer was simply told to create a theme about a father leaving their child for an important mission, and this would provide the heart of both the movie and the musical score. It's safe to say that Hans Zimmer delivered. Number 20, Back to the Future by Alan Silvestri. This is such a fun theme. It's adventurous, earnest, and frantic, all at the same time, matching the energy of this movie's fast-paced action. I'd say it's easily Alan Silvestri's most instantly recognizable movie theme. It's Been Educational and Clock Tower is a piece that's over 10 minutes long, and it's absolutely relentless. Every second counts as Marty and Doc desperately try to contain the 1.21 gigawatts and send Marty back to the future. The music keeps its high pace throughout, with the brass picking up as that crucial climactic moment approaches. The main theme blares as the lightning bolt strikes and they succeed, and the music finally calms down to Let Us Breathe as Doc celebrates. The music in the sequels is great too, particularly the third one where they incorporate a Western theme. But it's the original movie that stands tall as having one of the greatest and most memorable scores of all time. Number 19, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone by John Williams. Remember when I said that Interstellar's score had Hans Zimmer's fingerprints all over it? Well, Harry Potter's musical score is John Williams to a T. All of the Harry Potter movies have great music, but I'm going to mainly talk about that first movie for this pick. It's mysterious, whimsical, and yes, magical. Hedwig's theme has an exquisite melody that serves as the franchise's main theme. It fits the story and the world perfectly. Harry's Wondrous World is another really memorable piece. Norwegian Ridgeback and Christmas at Hogwarts harken back to some of Williams' work on Home Alone, which is funny considering that both Home Alone and Harry Potter are directed by Chris Columbus. According to him, John Williams composed and performed the main theme for him before even seeing any of the movie footage, and he immediately nailed it. Number 18, Beauty and the Beast by Alan Menken. Of all the amazing work Alan Menken has done for Disney, I think this is his best. From the second Beauty and the Beast begins, we get that opening shot of the forest and castle with that haunting piano motif. The entire score in this prologue immediately sets the tone for this masterpiece. Every one of Menken's songs in this film are classics, and the accompanying score ranges from fun and jovial to intense and chilling. The transformation theme always stuck out to me the most. It starts with that glimmer of hope when we think that the beast is dead, and the orchestral swell as the curse is broken. It's all so beautifully composed. This is Alan Menken's finest work in my opinion, and a more than worthy addition to his collection of Oscars. Number 17, Lawrence of Arabia by Maurice Jarre. Like with Dr. Zhivago, this is a team up with director David Lean and composer Maurice Jarre, and this is their magnum opus. I've already had Aladdin, Dune, and The Prince of Egypt on this list, but I think Lawrence of Arabia has the definitive theme when it comes to capturing the vast splendor of the desert. Jarre's musical score is grand and epic in scale, matching the scope of the film it's attached to. It's definitely something you gotta listen to for yourself. Number 16, Rocky by Bill Conti. Trumpets galore. Bill Conti makes incredible use of the brass instruments and percussion in this musical score, giving us some of the most motivational music of all time. Seriously, how many other musical scores could you actually see yourself working out to? Everybody knows Gonna Fly Now. It's one of the most iconic songs and movie moments of all time. But the way Conti ends this film with Going the Distance is just as good. The more Rocky and Apollo's battle intensifies, the more the music intensifies. Everyone thinks Apollo has it in the bag as Rocky struggles to get up. Mickey tells him to stay down. The violins and choir sing as Adrian watches from afar, internally pleading for him to get up. Not caring if he wins the fight, but simply wanting to tell him that she loves him. Then, the final bell gives us that unbelievable string-heavy victory theme. Even though Rocky didn't win the decision, he went the distance and won Adrian's heart, and this triumphant theme ends the movie on a high note. Brilliant job, Bill Conti. Number 15, Howl's Moving Castle by Joe Hisaishi. Remember earlier when I talked about Michael Giacchino and Joe Hisaishi's ability to tell an entire story through music? Well, that's exactly what Hisaishi masters in Howl's Moving Castle. Merry-Go-Round of Life is a gorgeous waltz that progresses beautifully from the opening piano notes. It definitely captures the wonder of this world and these characters. Hearing it for the first time in theaters as Howl walks through the air with Sophie was an incredible moment. This music has such a timeless charm and brings a jovial energy. Hisaishi has done brilliant work for so many of the Ghibli movies, but in my opinion, this is his masterpiece. Number 14, The Godfather by Nino Rota. From the second that lone trumpet plays, you instantly know what you're in for. The Godfather is easily one of the top 5 movies ever made, and it deserves nothing less than a masterful musical score. Thankfully, Nino Rota delivered. The Godfather waltz is mesmerizing, capturing both the elegance and the power of the Corleone family. Michael's love theme is just as amazing, making wonderful use of the violin and the mandolin, and feeling like an appropriate theme for Michael finding and losing his love. The musical score plays a vital role in that famous final scene, where Michael becomes the head of the family, literally and figuratively closing the door on Kay. The theme that had previously been associated with Vito Corleone is now passed on to Michael, just like the title of The Godfather. What a scene, what a movie, what a score. Number 13, Batman by Danny Elfman. For as amazing a job as Hans Zimmer did with the Dark Knight trilogy, Danny Elfman's Batman score from 1989 is synonymous with the character. The main titles give off that eerie, mysterious vibe in the beginning before exploding into an epic, heroic theme that suits the dark masked vigilante to perfection. Descent into mystery is also incredible, capturing the essence of Batman during this driving scene in the best way possible. There's no one chasing them, and there's minimal dialogue, but Tim Burton's visuals and Danny Elfman's music make this minute-and-a-half scene a memorable one. While Hans Zimmer's music was perfect for Nolan's more grounded take on The Dark Knight, Danny Elfman's theme is the definitive one for Batman. Number 12, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly by Ennio Morricone. When people think about the Old West, this is most likely the music that instantly pops into their head. Morricone's musical scores for the entire Dollars trilogy is legendary, but it's the good, the bad, and the ugly that stands out the most. This is also the music most people think of during an epic standoff. It's so creative with its use of a variety of instruments: the recorder, the electric guitar, the ocarina, and yes, even the whistling and the wahs. I also have to mention the Ecstasy of Gold, a truly majestic piece that plays while Tuco frantically searches through the cemetery. The way it escalates the more he runs around, and the way it immediately stops when he finds what he's looking for, is so brilliantly done. It's a great piece of music that even Metallica covered. In this world, there's 2 kinds of people: those who love Ennio Morricone's music, and those who dig. Number 11, Schindler's List by John Williams. Steven Spielberg's Schindler's List is perhaps the most heart-wrenching movie ever made, and its musical score absolutely reflects that. Before any of the music had been composed, Spielberg showed John Williams an early screening of the movie. Overwhelmed, Williams walked out for several minutes before coming back in tears and telling Spielberg that the movie needs a better composer than him. Spielberg responded by saying, "I know, but they're all dead." John Williams is mostly known for his upbeat, adventurous, and heroic-sounding marches, but I can't think of any other music he's composed that is so emotionally raw. Itzhak Perlman deserves a shout-out as the lead violinist, and I've heard many people describe it sounding like his violin is weeping throughout the piece. I honestly can't think of a better way to describe this music. It's essential to that pivotal moment in the movie when Oskar Schindler breaks down in front of the 1,100 people that he rescued, lamenting the fact that he didn't do enough. In his mind, he should have sold his car, his pin, and that could have been several more lives saved. What should have been a moment of joy for all the lives that he saved was actually a moment of sorrow over the ones that he didn't. Schindler's List is arguably the most powerful movie of all time, and John Williams' musical score was about as perfect as you can get for a film of this emotional magnitude. With all that being said, we've finally reached my top 10. These are musical scores that have deeply and personally resonated with me in one way or another. Musical pieces that I love listening to, not only in the context of the movie, but just because. Musical pieces that are prevalent in my mind and represent some of my favorite movies and memories of all time. And I can't think of a better movie to kick off the top 10 than my number 10 pick, Spider-Man by Danny Elfman. I'll never forget being a 10-year-old kid and seeing Sam Raimi's Spider-Man for the first time. It was the first superhero movie I'd ever seen, and it had me gripped from the opening titles. Elfman's score starts with those violins that build and build until the choir and brass section kicks in. It sounds and feels so massive in scale, which I think is in line with Raimi's take on Spider-Man. While I do enjoy the Garfield and Holland movies a lot, there's just something about Sam Raimi's movies that feel grander in scope, and Elfman's music fits perfectly with those epic sweeping shots of New York as Spidey swings around. Much like with his Batman theme, Elfman's theme has the perfect blend of sounding both eerie at the beginning and becoming heroic as it progresses. I also really like how the major villains have their own motifs, with Green Goblin and Doc Ock's themes really standing out. I also love Uncle Ben's Responsibility theme, which we get to hear many variations of, whether it be somber or inspirational, depending on the mood of the scene. As much as I love Danny Elfman's Batman theme, I'd say Spider-Man is his best work. Number 9, Jurassic Park by John Williams. What a beautiful score. John Williams captures the sheer majesty of the island and the dinosaurs that roam throughout it. The moment when Dr. Grant and Dr. Sattler see that brontosaurus for the first time is one of the most magical moments I've ever experienced in the cinema, and John Williams' score is a major reason why. I also love when the trumpets kick in and the tempo speeds up halfway throughout the main theme, yet the piece maintains its majestic qualities. Number 8, Superman by John Williams. While Batman and Spider-Man were high on my list, I can't think of another superhero theme that is more synonymous and fitting for a character than this. This theme is overflowing with optimism, inspiration, courage, and hope. It's everything that Superman stands for. I love John Williams' trumpet-heavy marches, and this theme is easily one of his most iconic. It was used again in Superman Returns, it was used in James Gunn's trailer for the newest reboot, and heck, it was even given a nod in the DCEU at the end of Shazam. Only Hans Zimmer ever created a different theme for Superman, and while he did a spectacular job on his theme, there's no way on Earth or Krypton that any superhero theme will be able to top this one. Number 7, The Lion King by Hans Zimmer. In my mind, The Lion King is the greatest animated movie of all time, so why should the music be any less than perfection? At the time, Hans Zimmer was never one to compose for animated movies, and only agreed to do The Lion King because he wanted to take his daughter Zoe, 6 years old at the time, to a movie premiere. I guess that means we can all thank her for being the reason that this masterpiece of a score exists. Hans Zimmer lost his own father when he was only 6, and as he put it, the death of a father needs a serious requiem. It's such a tragic, epic, powerful score that leaves the biggest emotional impact when Mufasa returns to Simba in the clouds, telling him to remember who you are. This Land is one of the greatest pieces of music ever written, and the triumphant theme that plays as Simba takes his place atop Pride Rock still gives this grown man the goosebumps. While I still have 2 more Hans Zimmer scores ahead of this one, I think it could make an argument as being the best musical score he's ever composed. Number 6. The Star Wars Prequels by John Williams. John Williams composed the musical score for all 9 of the mainline Star Wars movies, and he had some bangers all throughout the prequel trilogy. Let's start with Episode 1. I'm not really a fan of this movie, but man, that final battle with Darth Maul was unbelievable, and Duel of the Fates is a major reason why. The choir is otherworldly, and the way the orchestra builds throughout the piece adds so much tension to this fight. The music brings a great amount of gravity and weight to Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon's battle against Darth Maul, and Duel of the Fates is undoubtedly the most memorable part of The Phantom Menace. Episode 2 also has a memorable piece in Across the Stars. It mainly serves as Anakin and Padme's love theme. John Williams does an amazing job at making this theme that captures the intensity of their love while also having somewhat of a tragic tone, foreshadowing their inevitable downfall. Episode 3 has a lot of amazing pieces, including Anakin's Dark Deeds and Order 66. But to me, Battle of the Heroes is the definitive final battle music. Obi-Wan vs. Anakin was epic and had an incredible amount of weight to it. This piece truly embodies the intensity, chaos, and tragedy of the struggle between Jedi and Padawan, friend versus friend. John Williams went all out for Revenge of the Sith, and nowhere is that better proven than during this final battle. Number 5. Gladiator by Hans Zimmer, Klaus Badelt, and Lisa Gerrard. If you watch my review of Gladiator 2, you know that the original Gladiator is one of my favorite movies of all time. The story, acting, and action scenes are incredible, but it's the music that adds an unexpectedly emotional element to this film. Elysium and Now We Are Free are beautifully composed and sung, with Lisa Gerrard providing the vocals. Now We Are Free ends the movie on a heavenly note, sending Maximus peacefully into the afterlife with his lost wife and son. I also have to mention the opening battle theme, which sets the tone well for this movie's heated action. It's an epic, 10-minute long piece that utilizes that booming brass section perfectly. Number 4. Lord of the Rings by Howard Shore. Lord of the Rings is the greatest movie trilogy of all time in my opinion, and the music is consistently and thoroughly incredible from beginning to end. I apologize in advance if there are any specific pieces that I failed to mention here, but if I tried to hit them all, this video would be an entire hour longer. Howard Shore's musical score is just that good from beginning to end of this epic trilogy. From the moment Fellowship of the Ring begins and that mysterious sounding chorus of strings starts, you know that you're in for something special. The Shire theme is a warm and inviting way to introduce us to Middle-earth. It instantly makes you feel safe and at peace, and it sounds like the comfort of home. And then we get to Gandalf's climactic battle against the Balrog, with the orchestra and choir allowing us to feel every bit of intensity during this scene. The Two Towers also gives us standout musical moments like The Riders of Rohan and The Last March of the Ents. And in Return of the King, many people consider the lighting of the beacons to be the best musical moment of the entire trilogy. It's hard to make an argument there. Howard Shore puts so much passion into this powerful moment. Like I said earlier, there are so many other pieces and moments that I could talk about, but we'd be here all day. Howard Shore's musical score for Lord of the Rings is masterful. Number 3. Pirates of the Caribbean by Klaus Badelt and Hans Zimmer. This franchise made pirates cool again, primarily thanks to a legendary performance by Johnny Depp, fun storytelling, outstanding visual effects, and of course, an incredible musical score. Klaus Badelt collaborated with Hans Zimmer a lot throughout his career, and took charge of Curse of the Black Pearl. The upbeat, swashbuckling energy of this music fits the movie perfectly. The Medallion Calls is a great way to introduce us to Captain Jack Sparrow, and Sword's Cross gives us an intense, brass-heavy piece as Elizabeth is tormented by the undead pirates. Skull and Crossbones is a heart-pounding way to emphasize that final battle, and of course, He's a Pirate is easily one of the greatest and most recognizable movie themes ever made. As amazing as Bedelt's score was for the first movie, I think Hans Zimmer took it to an entirely new level in the second and third movies. Dead Man's Chest gives us a great cello-based theme for Captain Jack Sparrow. The two hornpipes at Tortuga make for some fun chaos at the tavern. The fast-paced Kraken theme keeps you on your toes. And if it weren't for Darth Vader, I'd say that the heavy pipe organ theme that Davy Jones plays is the greatest theme ever for a villain. There's so much power in this music that overtakes the innocent music box at the beginning, representing the man who was wronged by Calypso and turned into a monster. And I think that At World's End has the best music in the entire franchise. Hoist the Colors is such a chilling song that the people sing during a surprisingly dark moment at the beginning of this movie. It's a tune that returns many times throughout the course of the movie, including that epic final battle against Davy Jones in the middle of a maelstrom. Up is Down is a fun piece that is probably the most piratey sounding music that I've heard in this franchise. And One Day, along with I Don't Think Now Is the Best Time, represents the epic romance between Will Turner and Elizabeth Swann. The wedding scene, when they're both fighting and saying their vows, is absolutely spectacular, and the motif that plays when they seal it with a kiss, man, that was swoon-worthy. Number 2, Indiana Jones by John Williams. I can't think of a musical score that better embodies the spirit of adventure. Raiders March is one of the most well-known and loved pieces of music ever, with those powerful trumpets giving off an incomparable energy. Beyond that, we have The Basket Game, which is a fun, fast-paced piece that plays while Indy frantically tries to find Marion in one of the several baskets being carried around Cairo. The Map Room is a haunting piece that always stuck out in my mind. Indy using the Staff of Aaron to find the Ark's location is one of the most memorable parts of the movie, and the mysterious and otherworldly aura John Williams gives off here is a big part of that. This is escalated further during Miracle of the Ark, where the wrath of God overwhelms the Nazis. It's such a chilling and terrifying scene, and the way Williams' score builds and intensifies into sheer horror was absolutely amazing. There isn't a single bit of music in this movie that isn't memorable. John Williams was perfect here, but there's one musical score that he did that's even better. In my mind, the greatest movie musical score of all time is my number 1 pick, Star Wars: The Original Trilogy by John Williams. For all the great scores I've talked about, this is the only one that made sense at the number 1 spot for me. It captures everything that's thrilling about the movie-going experience. That main theme explodes from the second the movie begins and gives us that iconic opening crawl. It's a theme that's adventurous, romantic, and epic. Everybody knows and loves this theme, even people who have never seen Star Wars. It's that deeply ingrained into our culture. I'll never forget being a 6-year-old kid seeing the 1997 re-release in theaters and hearing that music for the first time. There are so many other memorable tunes in the original movie. Leia's theme, the Cantina Bar, the Throne Room Ceremony. John Williams gives us a thoroughly amazing and diverse set of music. I also have to mention Binary Sunset, a small scene that allows us to feel and understand everything Luke desires in this moment. Not because of any dialogue or exposition, but because of this gorgeous music. I mentioned earlier how amazing Davy Jones's theme was, but the Imperial March from Empire Strikes Back is the greatest villain music ever composed. It just exudes menace and evil in the most perfect way imaginable. And the finale of Empire Strikes Back leaves you with so many emotions. You have the uncertainty of Han Solo's capture, and the news about Vader being Luke's father. You have hope that Luke, Leia, and the gang will fix things, and you have that incredible final shot as they gaze out into space. John Williams' music during this scene is so beautifully fitting. Return of the Jedi didn't have quite as many memorable pieces as the first 2 movies, but for me, it was the re-release that gave us the most perfect music to end this trilogy with. The Ewok song from the original theater release is fun, but Victory Celebration from the 1997 re-release ends this trilogy in such a grand and beautiful way. And there you have it, my 50 greatest musical scores of all time. Like I said at the beginning of the video, there are so many other worthy scores that didn't make my list, but these are the 50 that I connected with the most, and I'd love to hear your picks. If you're still here, thanks for making it to the end of this long video. I'd love to see some of your favorite movie scores in the comments and why. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy my content, ring that notification bell. Thanks for watching, and I hope y'all have a good one.